Alrighty, cleaned up the rear end, torched off this was a cluster. So this was the original coil spring pack that they'd welded these discs to, which is common. However, you could not get a torch up into the weld because the disc was welded behind it. So I had to just keep torching and torching and torching until I got it out of there. But I got them off, destroyed the axle. I didn't destroy it, that would have to be welded up and the axle straightened, but point being is there was no way of getting in there. This was in the way. Either way, this is welded on this side. It was just not something for the faint of heart, I guess. It was a bitch. So I got them welded on, they're at the incline, all that, so they're good to go. Okay, let's review. Boy, what a mess. So, torched off those, torched off the airbags, and basically set up this rig. It's just with clamps. Those are old bed rails. Just drilled some big holes in them. Plumbed it out. Block down here. It's not touching. I've been moving it. But anyway, to set the pinion or the face of the differential up, you know, I can set it up at 90 degrees. I made them parallel, okay? And so in the case of the spring pads, that's what I started with. I identified center. That's the center line of this rear differential. The pinion is offset to one side. And when I had this set up at 90 degrees, I checked the angle of the spring pads. They were at 6 degrees up in the front. Okay? So then I just simply identified the center line on this axle. This is a 9-inch Ford. And marked them. You can't see it any longer because they're welded on. Marked them. And then I brought them back. Clocked them to 6 degrees on the pad. Okay? Pretty simple. With that face straight up and down. Then for the upper shock mounts, I welded a piece of bed rail laying in here somewhere. You got to watch this stuff because the welds like to break because this is old railroad tracks. But it's just scrap, you know, it's just scrap. What did I do? This kind of a number. This kind of a number. There, so I can get a tack in there and a tack in there. Then as it was on there, I identified the center line on the other rear end. I identified how far back from the face these were because that would locate the holes. I've already captured the angle of each, but I locate the holes from the face because I'm going to use the face to locate the lowers too. And then this was 1 1/8 down on that rear end. That rear end is the bolt pattern on that rear end is a 1/2 inch bigger on the diameter, or 1/4 inch of the diameter. So I set this up to 7/8 of an inch, or pardon me, 1 inch off the lower than the surface of this. Okay, leveled this. It's not level any longer because I've rolled it. But I mean, I leveled this, and I leveled this, and tack, 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 and then got everything, just finished welded everything up. I wrapped my welds 1 inch to the inside around the front on both of these. and put them on. Now, of course, they weren't the same as this, so I had to add material. You can see right in there, I've added material to accomplish the profile of the 9-inch Ford. So they'll look good when they're done. They'll mount up and they'll fit this 19 whatever it is Cadillac. Just going to finish up the lowers. All right, there we have it. That's a 9-inch Ford. This is hot. And bags are on. I did not do anything with any of this. So they had welded bags to the original GM spring pads, which is fine. It's just that it looked like it was welded upside down and that, you know, that kind of thing. So these are finished up. It will mount in to that GM. I used the original brackets and modified those. These went on pretty easy. I had some gaps, so I had to do a little bit of fill. That's why I welded it on the inside and the outside. Anyway, she's done. Hopefully I didn't get it upside down. I haven't started on these. I mean, they're all mounted, but I haven't started on the, you know, finishing them out. So that's a plan. But I got sidetracked on this plasma project. I got the light burn software now. I did wind up purchasing it, you know, whatever. It was like $60 or $70, but the capability is well worth the expense, I guess. Which means if the capability is worth the expense, is it an investment? In any event, I've been able to run the whole table again. 2 OD 2x3 cutting area 17 by 27.5, you know, because you got to work within the bounds of the tracks and all that stuff. Hindsight's 2020. You know, I could have put these out here in the corners to fully utilize the table, but, you know, what the heck. I do have water in the table. Okay, not a lot, because I'm trying to do a leak check on the center bung, and whatever creeps up to the corners, I can put a little more in, but thus far, no leaks. I just fired up the torch for the first time, because, you know, I just got that. This has got, it's a Pilot Arc low or non-high frequency thulium. It's kind of like a metal. 50 amp rated torch, 40 amp hardware in the torch. It does have 2T and 4T, which is a pretty nice feature. It does register in both megapascals and kilograms, kilogram feet per cubic meter squared, per centimeter squared area on the bottom. And so I don't understand any of that. So, you know, I got to go look at another gauge that is dual rated with PSI, and then get my settings. But I'll get that figured out. Anyway, at the end of the story, I just cut that piece and the thing works spectacular. It works as expected. Maybe that's what I'll say. And then I tried. I've been working on hitting the relay, right? Trigger with a relay coming off of the controller through that harness there. That harness was originally routed up and through the, you know, to the laser etching head. And I did have this fire before on that same relay that's in that socket, but for some strange reason it won't do it anymore. So I did a voltage check, and that's a 12 volt automotive mini relay But this has a 12 volt plus, a ground, 12 volt negative, but the ground, and a PWM modulating, or a TTL if you want to call it that. That's where it originates in the controller, and it drives that daughter board to turn on the fan and provide 12 volts for the fan on the laser head cooling fan, as well as fire the laser and change intensity. So when I set it up for plasma on the software, I just set it for maximum power whenever it turns on, go to 100% power so that I can get full voltage through the PWM. And the full voltage then basically says trip the relay and turn the torch on. So that's all I'm doing, is turning the torch on. And then, of course, the rest of it is turn the torch on at the right time and turn it off at the right time. And then the rest of it is just driving the software. So all the intensity is in the initial setup based on the thickness of the material you're using, and having those tables in front of you, and eventually building those in. You can build them into Lightburn as setup files, and then voila, we're up and flying. So the XY table works. I validated that the plasma cutter works. It's new, but it works as expected. I ordered a relay, a 5-volt relay from Amazon, and that's where I am at. And when that comes in, it should be in 3 days, hopefully sooner. But when that comes in, then I will wire that in, and we'll be ready to rock. So we'll get a chance to look at that. But that's 3 days. What am I going to do in 3 days? I'm going to have to get back on this. So it was a good opportunity to take a bit of a break, and so that's what I did. And now we're on to other things. Yeah, the fun begins. But I got 3 of them in mud. 3 of them waiting for mud, and basically I sanded one. Well, you can see I second coated some of them. I second coated this, and I hate stuff like this, but I'll kind of get that finished up. But what I'm doing is I'm popping the holes through and just kind of gauging how much material is in the hole, because these are where the chamfers are. None on the sides, on the doors. And then I'll come in and I'll put those chamfers in. I ordered offline button heads, tapered button head, I guess. So a taper with a radius head. And what I'm going to pick up too is all the washers, those chamfer washers, so that I don't scrape into that. They don't have to be awfully tight. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but also I'm drilling the holes out and going with the rivet, with a rubber well nut, I guess. And so we'll go from, I'll use the same factory holes, but then I'm opening the hole up to 5/16. And what that gives me is a little bit of tolerance, right, for the screw pitch, and even a slight amount, because it's rubber, slight amount of offset. So what I noticed is, when they did these in the factory, they must have just put the trim on and just ran a drill into the holes, because there's a scratch there, but you can see the distance from the hole there, and that one's greater, and that one's even greater, on the ends. And I didn't re-drill these. I mean, I'd have a scratch mark right there, right? So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all those out, and then I'm going to, there's a really good example, almost at the radius, and that one's in and that one's in. So it's just a matter of how this door skin was at the time of assembly and where they put the doggone holes. So I'm going to open those up. I know those are consistent. You can measure them with the tape measure off of a straight edge. You know, these crown, and they did that on the crown on all of them just to pull this up, because this flex is a little bit up when you put it together. Those are all on the same center line though. So I'll check before I drill. You know, if I need to pull the hole over, I can get a step drill and you know, raise that hole up to whatever, a 3/16 or whatever it needs to be to move it, slightly move it and test fit and all that. But in that manner, then these will go on perfect, and the screws will set into the tapers nice and flush. The other thing that a button head versus a flat head does with that radius is that it hides a lot of that, right? That radius edge, you can be at a little bit of an angle. Plus, they're the appropriate decorative screw for something of this nature. Anyway, I got those lined with mud. That one I did second coat because I pulled it out. I thought I could sand to the screws, and as I started to do that, then I realized, you know, when you're blocking this, you know, there's a perfect example. You know, I'm into the edge, but that's much farther in. The forming is not as consistent as it being blocked out. So I'm taking them to, you know, very, very straight. But between the forming and the years of use, I'm sure they're a little bit worse for the wear. But they are coming out good. They are just time consuming, and they certainly do a number on the old hands and thumbnails and everything else when you're trying to get into those corners and that. But that's what I'm working on. Hopefully I'll have these done by the end of the day tomorrow. They are laborious. I mean, it is not zip, zip, zip. So, for me anyway. Thanks. Well, one would think it was a no-brainer to do these trim pieces, but it was a no-brainer. But holy cow, it was monotonous. So I got them hung. I got 2 coats of high-build urethane on them, and I'm going to go after a 3rd coat because there was a lot of work. And then I'll sand them out and put them away.